In this video, we are going to talk about epithelial tissue. So epithelial tissue is tissue that lines ducts, cavities, or tubes throughout the body and covers the body surface. So if we think about what a sort of a tube looks like, right? So imagine that this is a tube here. If we look at it in sort of 3 dimensions, right? It's got a hole, and that's going to be the hole in it. So surrounding that is going to be cells, right? And that is our epithelium there, what surrounds it. So let's take a look at this sort of in a cross section. Cross section look like this, and then the hole in the center there. So the hole in the center of a tube or a cavity is called the lumen, and that's sort of the opening of that. All right, now our epithelial tissue, we're going to say, right, is what lines ducts, cavities, tubes, and surfaces. Okay. Now, our epithelial tissue has what we've referred to as polarity. And when we think about polarity, it's easy to think of the chemistry polarity with the sharing or unequal sharing of electrons. But in the world of epithelial tissue, polarity means that it has a distinct sides or directionality associated with it. So if we look at this being cells, or these being cells surrounding that lumen. Those are individual cells there. What this means is that these cells have a top side, or what we refer to as the apical side, and they have a bottom side, which is known as the basal side. So when we say an epithelial tissue has polarity, we mean that it has a very distinctive top and it has a very distinctive bottom side to it. So we call the top the apical side and the bottom the basal side. Now, the apical side is the side that touches the free surface or the open area. For our tube here, that's going to be the lumen, that opening in the tube. Now, if you think about your body surface, right, it covers your body surface, the apical side is going to be the side that touches the free air, that sort of surface side of it. Okay? Now, our epithelial tissue is also avascular. It's avascular, meaning that there are no blood vessels that penetrate that. So if we have blood vessels that are sort of out here, let's draw blood vessels in blue, I guess, and the blood vessels are out here, they'll sort of do something like this, where they won't penetrate into that epithelial tissue. All right, so they are avascular, no blood supply to these epithelial tissues. Now that's because that the epithelial tissue sits on a band of connective tissue and a band of proteins and glycoproteins. So this band of proteins, glycoproteins, is known as the basement membrane. The basement membrane. And the basement membrane is a combination of something known as the basal lamina and reticular lamina. Okay, so that is the basement membrane, basal lamina, and then the reticular lamina. Okay, so the epithelial tissue sets on that basement membrane, and it's also one of the ways to dictate that polarity, that side. The basal side, our basal side, is on the side with that basement membrane. Now, these blood vessels cannot penetrate through that basement membrane. So that's why the epithelial tissue itself is avascular. Epithelial tissue also has a high rate of mitosis, meaning that these cells divide rather rapidly. Okay, they divide rapidly and they divide frequently. One of the reasons that they divide frequently is because they don't have that blood supply, remember? And so they don't get a lot of nutrients that they need, so it's hard for them to be sustained and stay alive. But because they have this high rate of mitosis, okay, that high rate of mitosis is what's going to lead to a higher prevalence of cancer inside of epithelial tissue. So epithelial tissues themselves will have a high level of cancer associated with them. Okay, so those are sort of the features associated with epithelial tissue. Next video, we'll talk about the different types of epithelial tissue and how we classify it.